The year was 2450, and humanity stood at the precipice of a new age. For decades, humans had fought their way through the cosmos, carving a place among the stars. The Galactic Council had watched them closely, intrigued by their rapid technological advancements, their resilience, their ambition. Humanity was a rising power, and the Council had seen them as an asset, an ally in a universe rife with unstable species. But nothing lasts forever. Commander Aiden Coles sat in the darkened briefing room aboard the flagship Sovereign, staring at the cold blue light of the holographic display. His fingers hovered over the control pad, but he didn't need to touch it. The message had already been transmitted. He knew it as well as he knew the ticking of his heart. The decision had been made. Humanity has been expelled from the Galactic Council, the voice on the other side of the transmission had said, its tone dry and detached. Councillor Renard, the one who had been sympathetic to humanity's cause, was dead now, his influence erased. The vote had passed, 12-3. His fists clenched. Bastards! The air around him felt thin, as if every breath had just become harder to take. His mind raced through the implications. Expulsion meant more than just a diplomatic setback. It was a declaration of war, one that carried the weight of the galaxy's collective power behind it. He could already feel the weight of his own response forming in his chest. There would be no surrender, no diplomacy. Humanity had been betrayed. The stars outside the Sovereign's windows were nothing but distant pinpricks of light, a cruel reminder of the isolation that loomed ahead. The ship was silent, save for the soft hum of its engines, the only comfort Aiden had as he braced for the fallout of the Council's actions. His first instinct was to call for a full military mobilization, strike at the heart of the Council, wipe out their strongest bases. But Aiden was not rash. He had learned the hard way in the war against Devoctor that blind fury only led to destruction. No, this would require strategy, cunning. The Terran coalition had to respond with precision. He turned to the tactical map. It was dotted with various Galactic Council assets, strategic defense installations, supply depots, command centers. Each one a potential target. But not yet. The door slid open behind him, and General Syra Drachna entered. Her silhouette was framed by the dim light of the hallway, her expression unreadable. She was a Zertarian, a race known for their deadly precision in combat and their calm demeanor under pressure. Aiden respected her more than anyone else in the fleet. "Sir," she said, her voice steady, "I've reviewed the transmission. It's not a mistake?" Aiden met her gaze. Her large, pale eyes glimmered in the low light. "It's no mistake. The Council has betrayed us." Syra nodded slowly, absorbing the gravity of his words. "What's the next move?" Aiden stood up, his movements deliberate. "We're not going to rush into this. The Council wants to play politics, but we're going to play our own game." Syra raised an eyebrow. "You have something specific in mind?" He nodded, pacing in front of the tactical map. "I've already contacted our allies. The Andromedans are sympathetic to our cause, and I believe the Voltorians may still be willing to back us. We need to send a message, one that shows the galaxy we won't be ruled by anyone." He paused, turning to her. "We hit them where it hurts. Strategic strikes, sabotage. We'll dismantle their military infrastructure piece by piece." Syra didn't flinch. She understood exactly what Aiden meant. This was a war, not for territory, but for survival. Humanity would no longer be bound by the chains of diplomacy, by the Council's iron grip. The door to the briefing room slid open once again, and Lieutenant Malik stood there, breathless. "Sir, you're going to want to see this." He stepped forward and handed Aiden a data pad. Aiden took it without a word. The screen flickered to life, showing the live transmission from the Galactic capital. A human diplomat, one who had remained loyal to the Council's cause, was speaking before a crowd of alien delegates. His words were a slap to Aiden's face. "We will not cower before this threat. We've made our position clear. Humanity is the greatest threat to the galaxy's peace," the diplomat said. "We must unite against them. The Council will take whatever steps necessary to protect the galaxy. The broadcast cut off, leaving Aiden seething. He could feel the heat rising in his chest. This was it. The Council wasn't just isolating humanity, they were inciting hatred. They were preparing for a crusade, and Aiden would not stand by and let it happen. Let's show them who they're dealing with, Aiden muttered, his voice barely audible. Syra's sharp eyes met his, and she nodded. Later that day, aboard the Sovereign Asterisk, Aiden addressed the crew in the main hangar bay, their faces illuminated by the soft blue glow of the overhead lights. Thousands of eyes stared back at him, filled with uncertainty, fear, and resolve. The air was thick with anticipation. This is not just a matter of revenge, Aiden said, his voice ringing clear across the room. The Council thinks they can strip us of our place in the galaxy. They think they can crush us beneath their feet. But they've forgotten something vital. Aiden paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. They've forgotten that we are human. He let that last word hang in the air. The crew's posture straightened, and he could see the fire rekindled in their eyes. The Terran coalition was more than just a fleet. It was a symbol of defiance, of persistence. No matter the odds, humanity had never backed down. We're going to show the galaxy what happens when you underestimate humanity, Aiden said. We fight for our survival, for our future, and for every last human soul out there. The room erupted in applause. There was no turning back now. The betrayal had set the stage for a war, and Aiden Cole would lead humanity into it, with the unbreakable resolve that had always defined his people. The Council had made a mistake, one that would cost them dearly. Humanity was not to be underestimated. Humanity would rise. The vastness of space sprawled out beyond the Sovereign's bridge, an endless void punctuated by distant stars. The ship's engines hummed steadily, but in the silence of the command center, Aiden felt an unshakable tension pressing down on him. The decision had been made. The Galactic Council had cast its verdict. Humanity had been betrayed. The question now was, how would humanity respond? Aiden walked across the sleek metallic floor, his boots clicking with each step. Behind him, General Syra Drachna stood, her arms crossed, watching him intently. They had already received the news from Earth. Humanity's homeworld was in a frenzy, but Aiden knew they had no time to waste. It was clear now, the galaxy was not going to give them a seat at the table, not voluntarily. They had been cast out, and the road ahead was uncertain, dangerous, and long. Yet it was a road that had to be walked. They were at war, even if the first shot hadn't been fired yet. Sir, we've received communications from the Andromedans, Syra said, her voice cool and measured. They're willing to provide support, but they need guarantees that we won't destabilize the sector. Aiden stopped in front of the central command display, staring at the coordinates of their next move. His hand brushed against the console, the soft glow reflecting in his eyes. They want stability. Fine. Tell them we'll keep our operations contained. If we need to escalate, we will. But we need them on our side, now more than ever. Understood, Syra said, stepping back to relay the message. Aiden's thoughts wandered, tracing the contours of what needed to be done. Humanity's position was precarious. Alone, they would be overwhelmed. The Galactic Council was vast, and though their betrayal had shaken their position, the human race would need allies. They had none of the resources to engage the entire galaxy on their own. But the Andromedans weren't the only ones Aiden had in mind. Aboard the Sovereign, later that day asterisk. The room was filled with quiet murmurs as Aiden entered the large briefing hall. Around him sat the commanding officers of the Terran fleet, and a few select political figures who had chosen to stand with him. The rest of humanity's allies were either already under the fold or in talks, but these men and women were key to the first steps toward a long-term resistance. Aiden took his place at the head of the table, meeting the eyes of those assembled. There was no time for speeches, no need for formalities. The stakes were too high. The mood in the room was sober, but Aiden saw the same spark in their eyes that he had seen on his crew: determination, purpose. He opened the meeting with a single, direct statement. We've been betrayed. Our place on the Galactic Council is gone, and the galaxy will not give us another. But we will not go quietly into the night. General Malik Kaur, a seasoned officer who had once been stationed on Mars, leaned forward. The Andromedans might be a start, but we need more than just their fleet. We need resources, logistical support. What about the Voltorians? Aiden nodded. The Voltorians have their own ambitions, but they respect human resilience. I'm in contact with their leaders. They'll join our cause. They know that if we fall, they will be next. But it's going to take some convincing. He glanced at Syra, who had returned with more data. The Voltorians are known for their diplomacy, not their military prowess. Are we sure they'll contribute more than just their political weight? Syra's tone was cautious, yet pragmatic. They'll do more, Aiden replied firmly. But we need leverage. That means showing them we can defend ourselves. On Earth, simultaneously. Back on Earth, the Terran Coalition's government was in turmoil. News of the Galactic Council's decision had sparked violent protests, military mobilizations, and emergency meetings. The streets of New Berlin, the Coalition's capital, were filled with confusion and chaos. Ida Cole's message to Earth was one of defiance, but it was clear that the path ahead would require patience, negotiation, and ultimately, sacrifice. In the heart of the government building, Aiden's father, Fleet Admiral Cole, watched the news unfold, his face grim. Earth's political leaders were scrambling to react, some with diplomatic calls, others demanding immediate retaliation. He knew his son would not be waiting on diplomacy for long. Are we truly ready? A voice from the door asked. Admiral Heather Young, the head of Earth's Defense Intelligence, stood in the doorway, concern written across her face. The Council's forces may be vast, but our fleet is battle-hardened. However, we're outnumbered, and we still lack the right allies. I'm ready for whatever comes, Admiral Cole said, his tone steady. But my son, he's going to need all of us. The question isn't whether we're ready for war. It's whether we have the courage to lead humanity into it. Heather nodded, then stepped forward. Then let's show them what we're made of. Back on the Sovereign Asterisk. The following days were a whirlwind of strategy and preparation. The Voltorians were proving more challenging to sway than Aiden had anticipated. Their leaders wanted more than just promises of protection. They wanted tangible results, and soon. The situation became clearer as Aiden received another message from the Andromedans. They had agreed to send a small fleet of warships, but they demanded that humanity not be seen as a belligerent force in the sector. Aiden agreed reluctantly. They needed the Andromedans' firepower, but he could feel the weight of every concession they made. We're playing it safe for now, Syra said, reviewing the tactical map. But the Council will strike soon. When they do, we'll need to be ready. Every choice we make now will determine if we survive this. Aiden took a deep breath and glanced out the viewports of the Sovereign. The stars were distant, cold. But they were also vast. And humanity, for all its fragility, had a place among them. We've lost the Council, he said quietly, more to himself than anyone else. But that doesn't mean we've lost the galaxy. The chapter closed as the fleet prepared for its first coordinated strike against the Galactic Council's military installations. The Andromedan fleet was on its way, and Aiden knew that, while the next steps might not lead to victory, they were steps humanity could control. For the first time in centuries, they were free. Free to choose their future. Free to fight for it. And Aiden Cole would lead them every step of the way. The Sovereign was a silent giant in the void, its sleek, angular form cutting through the black expanse of space like a blade. The steady hum of its engines provided an eerie calm, but beneath that tranquility, tension surged like an electric current. Humanity had been expelled from the Galactic Council, and now, the fight for survival was about to begin. Aiden stood at the bridge's command center, staring at the tactical display. The planets and stations of the Galactic Council were marked with glowing red pins, each one a target. The next move was crucial. One misstep, and humanity's very existence could be crushed beneath the weight of the Council's forces. Syra Drachna, her expression stoic as ever, stood by his side, reviewing the intel that had just come through from their allies. The Andromedans had kept their word, sending a small but formidable fleet to support the Terran coalition, and the Volturians, after much deliberation, had pledged their aid, though cautiously. "We have the assets we need," Aiden said, his voice low but steady. "Now, we need to show the Council that we're not to be underestimated." Syra glanced at him. "What's the plan, Commander?" Aiden turned toward the holographic display of the galactic capital. The image flickered briefly as the transmission stabilized, revealing the massive ring-shaped station orbiting the planet. It was the heart of the Galactic Council, its most secure stronghold, and the symbol of its authority. Taking it down would be a gamble, but Aiden had no intention of playing it safe anymore. "We strike at the heart," he said, his voice resolute. "We disrupt their command, their communication lines. Force them to question their own power." The first blow. Hours later, the fleet was in position. Aiden's plan was simple: a surprise attack on the Council's outer defense perimeter, using the Andromedan fleet as a decoy to draw attention, while the Terran forces infiltrated through a weak point in the defenses. Once they were inside, they would cripple the station's power grid, cutting off communications with the rest of the galaxy. If they could isolate the capital, they might be able to turn the tide. The countdown began. "Ready," Syra said, her tone unwavering. "Launch the decoy," Aiden ordered. The Sovereign and its fleet of warships moved forward, weapons primed. The Andromedans deployed their stealth ships, which moved swiftly and silently through the void, drawing the attention of the Council's defenses. Their ships, designed for espionage and surprise, made quick work of drawing fire away from the Terran ships. Within moments, the first blasts of enemy fire cut through space. Aiden felt the pulse of adrenaline flood his system, his mind calculating every move. He didn't need to see the battle. It was all unfolding in his mind's eye. They had trained for this, prepared for years. It was time for humanity to prove itself. "Deploy the strike team," Aiden ordered. "We're going in." Syra nodded, her expression a mix of determination and readiness. "This is the moment, Aiden. Let's show them what we're made of." Inside the galactic capital, the infiltration team, a group of the most elite Terran soldiers, descended silently upon the outer rim of the galactic capital's defense stations. Aiden had selected his best, the ones who knew how to move like shadows, strike without leaving a trace, and dismantle the enemy's defenses with precision. As the soldiers deployed, they moved swiftly through the station's corridors, cutting down automated turrets and neutralizing guards with practiced ease. Aiden's mind raced. Every moment was critical. They had to reach the core of the station and disable the power grid before the Council had a chance to react fully. The station's layout was labyrinthine, a maze of hallways, control rooms, and maintenance tunnels that sprawled beneath the surface. But the Terran team knew this place better than the Council. They had studied every schematic, every blueprint. The team moved swiftly, and their presence was barely a whisper in the sterile, artificial halls of the station. "Aiden, we're in position," came the voice of Captain Lyra, the leader of the strike team. "Approaching the main reactor core." "Hold your fire until I give the word," Aiden replied. "This is it. Let's make it count." The unexpected twist. As the team neared the reactor, something unexpected occurred. The lights on the station flickered. A surge of panic shot through Aiden. He had anticipated resistance, but not this. Something was wrong. The Council's defense systems were failing, and Aiden's gut told him that the worst was yet to come. "Status report," Aiden barked. Syra turned to him, her face tight with concern. "The Council must have anticipated this move. They've triggered lockdowns. The inner core is sealed, and they've activated emergency countermeasures. We can't stop the shutdown." Aiden clenched his fists. They were so close. But the enemy had outsmarted them. They had anticipated this attack. The sudden realization hit him like a hammer. The Galactic Council had been preparing for a war, and humanity had been the target all along. "Damn it," Aiden muttered, then, after a beat, looked up at Syra. "We push through. We make them pay for underestimating us." A new strategy. The strike team had no choice but to adapt. The backup plan kicked into motion. Captain Lyra's team initiated a secondary assault on the station's secondary power conduits, while Aiden's forces fought their way deeper into the heart of the station. The battlefield was a nightmare of flashing lights, explosions, and the eerie silence of space. "We've got them on the ropes." Lyra's voice crackled through the comms. "Keep moving. We'll reach the core. We're not letting them win." Aiden felt the surge of pride in his chest as the team fought with unwavering resolve. They were on the brink of victory, but at the same time, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of something much larger. The fight raged on, the Terran forces slowly pushing deeper into the heart of the station. Aiden's eyes burned with intensity as he processed every battle, every twist and turn. Humanity was showing its true potential. They would not back down. "We're almost there," Aiden whispered to himself. The tide turns. As the final surge of the Terran forces tore through the core defenses, the station's lights blinked out completely. Silence followed. The station had been plunged into darkness, and the Galactic Council's hold on the heart of the galaxy had been shattered. Aiden's strike team stood victorious in the center of the reactor chamber. They had won. For now. "We did it!" Captain Lyra's voice echoed through the comms. "The power grid is down. We've crippled their communications." Aiden exhaled, letting the weight of the victory settle over him. They had dealt the first blow. The fight for humanity's future was far from over, but this was a significant victory. They had disrupted the Council's plans and shown the galaxy what they were capable of. Humanity had proven its worth. "Send the signal," Aiden said, his voice low and steady. "Let them know, this is only the beginning." As the signal went out, broadcasting their victory to every corner of the galaxy, Aiden couldn't help but feel a surge of pride. Humanity had faced betrayal, but they had fought back. And now, the galaxy would know, humanity was not to be underestimated. The war for survival had only just begun. The stars outside the Sovereign's observation deck glowed coldly, their light distant and indifferent. Inside, however, the mood was anything but indifferent. The flickering lights of the console reflected the unease on the faces of the crew. The first blow had been struck, but the battle was far from over. Commander Aiden Cole stood before the large tactical display, the hum of the ship's engines offering a strange comfort. Humanity had finally sent a message, loud and clear: they would not be crushed by the Galactic Council. But now, with the first wave of resistance in their favor, the real test began. His eyes scanned the map. The galactic capital was still intact. The Council's fleet had regrouped, and the galaxy's largest military power was not about to let a rebellion go unpunished. "Syra, status report," Aiden said, his voice firm but betraying the weight of the moment. Syra Drachna stood beside him, her gaze fixed on the display, calculating every move. "The Council's forces are in disarray, but they are not defeated. They'll regroup, and they'll retaliate with everything they have." "I know," Aiden said, running a hand through his short-cropped hair. "That's why we need to hit them harder. We can't wait for them to recover." A low hum echoed through the ship as it shifted into combat-ready position. Aiden's instincts screamed at him to keep pushing, to strike while the Council was vulnerable. But there was more at stake now than just military victory. Humanity needed a vision, a future. The Sovereign's comms officer broke the silence. "Commander, you're going to want to see this." Aiden and Syra exchanged a glance before heading toward the comms station. The screen flickered to life, revealing a live broadcast from the galactic capital. Counselor Emra Vaughn, the architect of humanity's expulsion, stood in front of a crowded council hall. Her face was stern, her words sharp and precise. "To all sentient races of the galaxy," Emra began, her voice cold and commanding, "we will not allow the chaos wrought by a single, rebellious species to fracture the order of the galaxy. Humanity has shown its true colors, and now, we must deal with this threat accordingly. We shall strike them down, and ensure that they never rise again." Aiden's hands clenched into fists. Emra was playing a dangerous game, underestimating humanity's resilience. But she wasn't wrong. This was no longer about a diplomatic struggle. It was a fight for survival. And humanity would not go down without a fight. Syra's voice interrupted his thoughts. She's rallying the council. She'll have the backing of the entire fleet soon enough. Aiden exhaled slowly. Let her rally them. We'll make sure they regret ever underestimating us. The battle for the capital. Days later, the Sovereign and its fleet stood ready. The Valtorian and Andromedan forces had combined their strength, and Aiden's strategic brilliance had carved a path straight to the galactic capital. It was time to bring the fight to the heart of the enemy's power. The fleet surged forward, weaving between asteroids and debris in the capital's orbit, the vast city station a looming monolith ahead. Aiden's hand hovered over the command panel, his heartbeat steady but intense. The Council's forces were waiting for them, ships as far as the eye could see. A clash was imminent. Brace yourselves, Aiden said, his voice calm but tinged with steel. This is our moment. We fight not just for ourselves, but for every species the Council seeks to control. Humanity will lead the way. The fleet accelerated, and the battle erupted. Explosions rang out as the Sovereign's cannons fired, tearing into the enemy's defenses. The Valtorian fleet engaged the Council's ships head-on, while the Andromedans harassed their flanks with their stealth vessels, striking from the shadows. Aiden's eyes narrowed as the tactical map shifted, tracking the movements of enemy forces. The Council wasn't holding back. They had thrown everything they had into this fight. But humanity had the advantage of surprise and determination. The Council's commanders were too slow to adapt to the ferocity with which the humans struck. Aiden's comms officer spoke quickly. We've disabled their central command station. The Council's flagship is vulnerable. Syra's voice crackled over the intercom. We've got them on the ropes, Commander. We should finish this now. But Aiden hesitated. No, he said, his voice firm. We're not here to destroy everything. We're here to prove a point. He turned to Syra, who looked at him quizzically. What do you mean? Aiden's gaze was fixed on the glowing capital. We'll take their flagship, but we'll give them a chance to surrender. We're not just fighting for power, we're fighting for a future where humanity is respected. We have to show them we're better than they think. The final confrontation. A short time later, Aiden stood aboard the bridge of the Sovereign, facing the shattered remnants of the Council's flagship. The vast expanse of space was quiet now, save for the occasional hum of the ship's engines. Emra Vaughn's face appeared on the main screen, her expression hard, yet there was a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. Aiden's message had been clear: surrender, or face the consequences. You've made your point, Commander, Emra said, her voice cold but tinged with a subtle respect. Humanity has proved itself, but what now? Aiden stepped forward, his voice unwavering. What now is up to you. You have a choice. You can continue fighting and watch your empire crumble, or you can work with us to build something better. The galaxy doesn't need rulers. It needs cooperation. She stared at him for a long moment, and for the first time, Aiden saw doubt in her eyes. The Council had underestimated humanity, its strength, its ingenuity, its resilience. They had made a grave mistake. We don't need to be enemies, Aiden continued. We don't need to rule the galaxy. We need to be a part of it, to shape a future where no one dominates another. This is the dawn of a new era. Emra's silence was heavy, but finally she spoke. I will not surrender. But I will listen. I will consider what you've said. Aiden nodded. That's all we ask? A new beginning. The galactic capital was in shambles, but humanity had shown the galaxy that they would not be silenced. The war was far from over, but it had taken a new shape. The Council had fractured, and in its place, a new alliance began to form, one where humanity would no longer be a subordinate species, but an equal partner in shaping the galaxy's future. Aiden stood before his crew, his eyes scanning their faces. They had won, but there was still so much to do. The path ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in history, humanity was no longer a pawn in the galaxy's game. They had become the players. Let's show the galaxy what humanity can do, Aidan said, his voice strong, filled with the certainty of someone who knew their purpose. The Sovereigns sailed forward into the unknown, but for humanity, the stars no longer seemed so distant. The future was theirs to shape. And they would never again be underestimated.